The service we're gonna use is called localhost.run. Obviously, you can have your own server with your own SSH server on it and configure it properly to forward ports to your computer. But we're going to be using the service that allows us to use their own SSH server for port forwarding. And you'll see that it's simply going to be one command. Before doing that though, we're going to have to generate an SSH key for us so we can authenticate with the server that these guys give us. So to do that, we're going to do SSH-keygen. It's going to ask us where do we want to store it. I'm just going to hit enter to store it in the default directory that is mentioned right here. It's also going to ask us if we want to use a passphrase. You should, but I'm just going to keep that as empty as the default. It'll just make things easier. And that's it. Now we generated an SSH key and the key is automatically stored in the default directory. So we actually won't need to point to it when we're trying to SSH into the localhost.run servers. And that's it. We're actually done. We're ready to start port forwarding. So for this example, let's try to expose our local HTTP server that Kali has. So we're going to do service Apache 2 start to start my HTTP server. And as you can see, no errors. That means it started. So if I go to my browser and just go to localhost, just to my actual local machine, you'll see that it says it works, everything is working fine. The problem now is we want to expose this local server, so you could have a phishing website, a cloned website, or even a file to download, or even a backdoor stored in here, and you want to expose this to the internet. Now, computers such as this one, my target computer, which is running Windows, will not be able to access this because it's connected to a completely different network. Therefore, to do that, we're going to be using the SSH service that we have been speaking about. And doing that is going to be very, very simple. We're going to do SSH. That's the command that we want to use. We're going to use -r to specify the ports and the server that we want to forward ports to. So we're going to do port 80. And that's going to be forwarded to my local host that also has port 80 open. So what I'm saying is basically any requests that this SSH server gets on port 80, I want it to be forwarded to my local host, which is this computer right here, to the service that is running on port 80 on this computer, which is Apache. Then we're going to give it the IP of the SSH server on the internet, or the domain. So in our case, the domain name is localhost.run. That's the service that I said we're going to use. And that's it. It's actually as simple as that. Like I said, it's one command. You won't need to run the keygen anymore. You only do it once. So we're using SSH. We're using the -r to specify the remote port on the remote host, which is this one. And we're saying we want anything that comes on port 80 to that remote host to be redirected to my current host, to the local host, to port 80. So we're gonna hit enter. It's gonna ask us, do we want to trust this? We're gonna say yes, we wanna trust it. And boom, that's it, we're done. So this will be the IP that we're gonna be sharing with our target, and this will actually work from any computer on the internet. So let's just test it on our local computer first. As you can see right here, we're simply loading localhost, but let's go and load this domain, and perfect. As you can see, it works. It's saying it works. That means our HTTP server is exposed to the internet. But just to double check, let's go to our target computer and load this website. And perfect. As you can see, it is exposed to the internet, and anybody within the internet will be able to access my HTTP server without having to enable port forwarding. So let me give you another example. Let's see how we can hack this computer with a Metasploit payload, even though this computer is connected to a completely different network. So going back to this computer right here, we're gonna have to first of all create our backdoor, and I'm gonna create a very simple one using MSF Venom just for the sake of demonstration. So we're just gonna do MSF Venom. We're gonna do -p to give it the payload type, and it's gonna be Windows Interpreter reverse HTTP. We're gonna give it the lhost, and usually in the lhost we give it the IP of our current computer, but as I said, the IP of the current computer is private. It's only visible within this network, and I want to receive this connection from another computer that is connected to another network, so I want to receive it over the internet. Therefore, we're actually going to be using this address right here. This is the address of our SSH server that is configured to forward ports to us. And we're gonna give it the L port, and we're gonna set that to 80 because currently we set the tunnel to forward ports from 80 to 80. That's why we're using 80 here. And finally, we're gonna give it the file type, which is executable, and the output file, and we're gonna just call it evil.exe. So very simple. We're using MSF Venom to generate a backdoor with a Metasploit payload. We're giving it the payload type, and we're using HTTP here because that's a limitation of this service of localhost.run. It only allows us to forward HTTP traffic. We're giving it the lhost to the address of our SSH server on the internet. Again, we took that from here. We're setting the port to port 80, and file type is an executable, and the file name is going to be called evil.exe, and that's going to be stored in my current working directory. I actually want to store this in my web root so I can actually download it using the web server that we started in here. Therefore, I'm just going to type var www.html because that is the default path of the web root. So if we hit enter, this will generate the backdoor for us. And if we go to our file manager in var www.html, you'll see we have the new evil.exe file, which is the backdoor that we just generated. So now let's go to the target computer and let's download it. Again, this is a computer connected to a different network, and we're gonna be able to download it by simply typing evil.exe through the web server that is running right now. And as you can see, it's allowing us to download the file. And if we look at our file manager, we'll see the file, we have it right here. Now, before I run it, I will actually have to listen for incoming connections, as you know. And right now, Apache is actually running on port 80. So I need to first of all stop Apache, which is my web server, by typing service apache to stop. And then we're gonna listen for incoming connections using Metasploit's multi-handler. The reason why we're doing this, because this service right here, localhost.run, only allows us to forward ports on port 80 and only allows us to set up one tunnel. So it's a limitation of the service, and that's why I start my web server, I downloaded the file, and now I'm starting my backdoor. You could actually pay for the service and it'll allow you to run multiple tunnels, or you could just have your own SSH server. It really depends on you. The goal of this video is just to teach you how to forward ports using SSH. So, we stopped our Apache, we're gonna clear the screen, and we're gonna start MSF console so that we can listen for incoming connections using the multi-handler. So to do that, we're gonna use exploit multi-handler. We're gonna set the payload to the payload that we picked, which is Windows Meterpreter reverse HTTP. We're gonna set the L port to the port that we picked, which is 80. And we're gonna set the L host to the same L host that we set up in the backdoor, which is this one, which is the IP of our SSH server. And finally, we're usually done at this stage again because we're receiving connections within the network, or we're receiving the connections directly to our computer if it's on the cloud. In this case, we're using SSH for port forwarding. Therefore, there is one more option that we need to set, which is the reverse listener bind address. So this basically tells Metasploit that I'm actually listening for incoming connections on a computer that is not the one that we set in the L host, because you know the one in the L host is my SSH server, and right now I'm listening for incoming connections. The handler is running on my local host on this computer, and that's why we're gonna set this option to the local host. We're gonna hit enter, and now you can do just show options for you to have a look on all the options that we set so far. And now that we're done, we're gonna do exploit. This will simply listen and wait for incoming connections. So let's go to the target computer. Again, a computer that is connected to a completely different network, and it can actually be in different countries. Doesn't really matter. We're gonna run it. We're gonna accept this. We're gonna say run anyway. And let's go back to the hacker computer. And as you can see, we are receiving a connection from the target computer, and now we have a interpreter session. We can do sysinfo to get more information. we can do dir to list files and so on. We basically have full access to this target computer, and this was just another example on how to forward ports using this particular service, localhost.run. Like I said, there's a number of limitations to the free service. The main one is allowing you to only have one tunnel and one port. But like I said, you can bypass that by signing up to the paid one or by having your own SSH server. But the main thing is it's actually very easy to use this to expose a service to the internet. So from now on, after you generate your SSH key, which is this step right here, once you're done with that, all you have to do is simply run this command, and that's it. You're gonna forward ports to port 80 on the SSH server to whatever port that you put in here. It's as simple as that. So in many cases, it'll actually be even faster than going to your router settings and enabling port forwarding on your own router. Sorry if I flew over some of the stuff like generating the backdoor and the concepts and even how networks work. It's hard to cover all that in details in a YouTube video. I do cover this stuff in more details in my courses, so check them out if you want to learn more, or use Google to learn more about anything that I did not cover in details.